Like any good multiverse movie, The Flash has the cameos. Oh boy! And I'm counting, you might be like, what are the rules, Grace? Well, I'm counting any notable DC character in the film outside of the main three, which are Ezra Miller's The Flash, Michael Keaton's Batman, and Sasha Calle's Supergirl. As you're about to see, these cameos do a really nice job, actually, of reflecting the history of DC on the screen, big and small. And I think they're one of the things that made me leave the theater feeling so nice and calm. As always, I look forward to hearing your own thoughts down below, as well as your own rankings. I wonder how ours will compare. All right, let's play. Number 10, Jeremy Irons' Alfred. The worst Alfred. Or is that Andy Serkis? Oh, is that a controversial statement? I'd be surprised if it is. I think it's a toss-up between the two of them as to who's the worst. And nothing against them personally, but just to me, as a major Batman fan, they don't act very Alfred-y. Still, someone has to coach the Justice League when you have limited members available due to off-camera drama. I mean, let's be honest, shouldn't Cyborg be in charge of communications amongst the team? In the field, of course, but that's really who should have been quarterbacking. Although I wouldn't say that Alfred here was the quarterback. He was more of like the Justice League, like assistant or secretary. But Irons, he looked great, right? And has some solid dry one-liners. Who doesn't love a bitchy Alfred? Number 9, Teddy Sears, The Flash. Who? For those of us who don't watch the CW, I'm familiar with the CW, but this is a deep cut for me as someone who doesn't watch those shows. I didn't even realize this was a cameo at first. But it is, so he's on the list. And he ain't last, so he's got that going for him. Now, you'll also see here that I'm noting which characters are rendered by VFX, aka, CGI, as I've said here. Now, of course, they had to do that with actors who are no longer with us, but because that was the look of the Chrono Bowl, Andy Muschietti's version of the Cosmic Treadmill, even actors still around today and still on speaking terms with Warner Brothers, they came in, but then their scenes, even though they acted them out for the VFX team, were then VFXified. I liked it, although some of you think it's awful. So it turned out to be an artistic choice that's a little divisive. So Teddy Sears did film this, and he was just made to look like he didn't. All right, so Teddy Sears. Now, since I don't watch, as I said, the CW shows, this cameo means absolutely nothing to me. And it's probably a poor substitute for the cameo that CW fans really wanted, and that was Grant Gustin, the CW's Flash. Like, why wouldn't he show up in a Flash movie? Why no Gustin? Miller even showed up on Gustin's show. But I think Warner Brothers didn't want, it should have been Gustin starring as the Flash in this movie to become a thing. I mean, it kind of already is a thing, but it really would have blown it up if he'd actually appeared in the movie in a cameo. People have been like, see, there he is, there he's right there. So they made sure he wasn't anywhere near the movie. I don't even think he went to the premiere. That's cold. That's cold, man. All right, so when I'll check and see if he went to the premiere. So when the multiverse first starts to fall apart in the movie, we see another Flash. One of the first things we see is another Flash in their own Chrono Bowl. Again, Andy Muschietti's take on the Cosmic Treadmill. I think this is fine. I'm not married to the treadmill idea, but then I'm not a hardcore Flash fan either. But this time, you're seeing, instead of these Flashes that we've been with for the most of the movie, you're seeing the original Flash back from the Justice Society of America days, Mr. Jay Garrick, who was played by Teddy Sears on the CW. Sears, though, in fact, like Miller, has played multiple versions of the Flash, but here they went with the classic Jay Garrick, which makes sense. That makes sense. And it was Sears' first role in the Berlantiverse. Oh, so music to the ears of some of you, while it makes others of us, let's be polite. Others of us don't care for it. All right, number 8, George Reeves' Superman. It's a very quick cameo, but it might not register with some fans today, but it was really, really nice of the movie to include Reeves. Reeves was the first on-screen Superman, appearing on the very popular TV show, so popular that he even famously guested on I Love Lucy. And ironically, Ben Affleck, Batfleck himself, played George Reeves in 2006's Hollywoodland, which was about Reeves' mysterious death at the age of 45. In fact, legend has it that the role of Superman is cursed. Reeves is definitely a DC icon, though. So again, as I said, it was really, really nice of them to include him. But many more people, of course, are familiar with number 7, Adam West's Batman. Adam West, of course, played Batman on television. You know, George Reeves was TV Superman, and Adam West was TV's Batman. But the Adam West show was like really, I mean, the George Reeves show was successful, but the Adam West thing, you know, I guess also because it was a little bit, you know, I don't know. I mean, they were not too far apart, but the Adam West show, as we all know, was a really big deal, right? And as I think, also, I don't think the George Reeves show with Superman really airs anywhere, but the Adam West Batman show is still well known, you know, also for some of the other casting choices, like Eartha Kitt as Catwoman. That's very famous. But Adam West helped keep the show in the public eye due to his activities, which we're going to talk about right now. But the show, a camp take on Batman, was so successful that it even got its own very campy movie with some hilarious things that are still gifs and memes today. West was fortunate enough to live a very long life, and he only recently passed away. And over the years, he not only continued to work here and there, he was a long-running character on Family Guy, but he also stayed connected to his fans, doing cameos and new Batman projects and going to conventions. This kept West in the public eye, and his kindness and love of Batman and his fans not only kept his original fans, but made him plenty of new ones along the way. West, I would say, is arguably the second most famous and beloved Batman after Kevin Conroy, who also tragically recently passed away. Both were Batman for entire generations. You might be like, why isn't Kevin Conroy in here? Well, they didn't open up they didn't open up to animation. I think that would have been too space jammy. So they kept it just to the live action stuff. But you know, of course, Kevin Conroy is, I think to this day, the most famous Batman. Although who knows what will be said 20, 30 years from now. All right. I think part of it is the longevity of playing the character or being associated with it. And that's something that West and Conroy both have going for them. Number 6, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. Her cameo is not very big, and she doesn't get any action sequences. But at least she wasn't entirely cut from the film. Yes, Henry Cavill had filmed a little something for this right after Black Adam came out, and Dwayne Johnson was still in the mix to potentially head DC. So there's something on a cutting room floor somewhere, or maybe under Dwayne Johnson and Henry Cavill's pillows. But anyway, it's not in the movie anymore. And Henry Cavill shows up very briefly in the Chrono Bowl, but I think they just VFX'd, did the VFX treatment to one of his frames from a SnyderVerse movie. But Gal Gadot's in this movie. After the divisive Wonder Woman 1984 and some odd choices in Shazam 2, it is nice to see Gadot get to say goodbye. I think she's saying goodbye. It's never been totally clarified, but I think she's out. But in a more classic scenario, cleaning up after the boys. Yes, here she saves the day when Batman almost drops the criminal. That was great. I thought he might drop him. When Batman almost drops the criminal and the virus into the river, killing almost everybody so quickly. That was a pretty big deal. I don't know why Wonder Woman took so long getting there. She did take her sweet time getting in there. Maybe it wouldn't gotten that close to the edge if she'd showed up for this chase on time. I'm going to bring it up at the next meeting, just saying. It's a little bit of friendly feedback. But also, there's a cute gag with the lasso of truth and a cute flirtation with Batman. Basically, it's a cute cameo. But most of all, it's a respectful cameo for the Wonder Woman character that recently, at least when Gal Gadot has been playing her, hasn't always gotten a lot of respect. Number 5, Jason Momoa's Aquaman. No matter what you think of the quality of his acting, Jason Momoa is a good sport. That's in fact how I would describe his acting ability. This is a fun cameo, and the dialogue less embarrassing than the Peacemaker finale, where he also appeared with Ezra Miller, by the way. I think it's hilarious that drunk Aquaman falls into a puddle and says he's home. Basically, it's a cute post-credit scene, more cute, so fans aren't disappointed that there isn't an end credit scene. And Momoa does a nice job with it. He doesn't phone it in, he delivered. It's the funniest of the SnyderVerse cameos in The Flash, and unlike his fellow Justice Leaguers, Momoa might actually be sticking around as Aquaman, or maybe someone else. We'll see. And I think a big part of his longevity is being a good sport, not just for DC, but for Warner Brothers overall. Also, that's not so much being a good sport, but Warner Brothers is heavily invested in Jason Momoa's, just Jason Momoa in general. They put him in the Dune movies, although he's not in the Dune movies anymore. So I guess I don't know if that would be helping him or not. But he's been a good sport and a good soldier. Ezra Miller tried to double down on Warner Brothers content with Harry Potter. If only Miller had done a better job in those movies. Whew! Night and day with Miller's Flash performance. All right, number 4, Ben Affleck's Batman. Ben Affleck has said that with this movie, he felt he finally understood and figured out how to play Batman, and he certainly does shine here. He has an amazing opening action sequence showing off some of the toys that Batman is famous for. He's never had this many toys. It's fantastic. But he also has some downtime with Barry to hit a couple of emotional beats. Loved it. What was with that white interior on his car? I was like, a white interior on the car? That's amazing. Don't let Barry in there because Barry's snacking all the time. It's going to get cheese stains and food stains all over it. All right, so at first, after Justice League, Ben Affleck was done with Batman. He was out of there. It was so horrible. But the Snyder Cut and then Walter Hamada were able to coax him back. So much so that when the studio decided not to keep Michael Keaton as Batman, but before the George Clooney replacement, Ben Affleck had even stepped up to shoot a cameo for Aquaman 2, where Michael Keaton had previously been appearing. The Michael Keaton cameo was cut, and now word is that the Ben Affleck cameo has been cut as well. Whew! Yes, it seems Ben Affleck is done with Batman once more. As even though James Gunn, when he first said Ben Affleck wasn't going to be Batman anymore, he was like, oh, but here's some sugar to make the medicine go down. Ben Affleck is totally open to directing a movie for us. But then just a few months later, when promoting Air, Affleck clarified he would not direct something for Gunn. In fact, he stated emphatically, absolutely not. That's a direct quote. But then he was quick to clarify that he has no beef with Gunn. I think Affleck is just tired of the DC beef in general. He needs a break. And Air was fantastic. Ben Affleck is getting back on his Argo track. Number 3. All right, so I wonder if our lists so far have been about the same. But I do suspect that hardcore SnyderVerse fans will have Ben Affleck even higher than number 4. But now, because these are some big deal freaking cameos, I think it's going to get a little tricky, and I am so curious to see what all of our number 1s are. Oh, I wonder if you'll be able to guess mine. All right, so number 3, Christopher Reeve and Helen Slater. I'd heard Helen Slater's still alive, by the way. She was at the Flash premiere, which was so nice. But I'd heard that Christopher Reeve was going to cameo. But at my press screening, I was surprised and delighted to see Helen Slater fly into the shot next to him as Supergirl. Christopher Reeve is, of course, an iconic Superman who, with Richard Donner, made a comic book movie when they weren't making them at that point, and they succeeded wildly. You will believe a man could fly. Boy, did everybody. What's more, for many people, because that was his breakout role, Christopher Reeve was Superman for the rest of his life, and he never complained about it, as a lot of stars like to do today. If only people would see me as something other than blah, blah, blah. As, that's even David Schwimmer used to say that about Ross for Friends. You're like, how many actors nobody's ever heard of? Just be happy. And Christopher Reeve was happy. He really was also almost a custodian of the Superman character. And he continued to represent Superman really wonderfully, even when tragedy struck another Superman actor. And Reeve was thrown from his horse and paralyzed from the neck down in 1995. Reeve would live on for almost a decade longer, becoming a champion for the rights of the disabled, and would continue to work when he could. I'll even forgive him for making a Rear Window remake. Good for Reeve. It was a good idea for someone, for a role that he could still play. Now, while Helen Slater's Supergirl movie, made due to the success of Reeve's films, was not a hit by any means, a real flopperoo, Slater, like other DC stars, has been faithful to the fandom. I mean, sure, it's like kind of an industry too, but she stuck it out, not only making public appearances, but appearing in DC projects here and there, like Smallville and the CW's own Supergirl. And as I said, she was even at the Flash premiere, so I think that was nice to see. Number 2, George Clooney's Batman. What? George Clooney did not have to do this. In fact, he's gone on the record as saying he is the worst Batman of all time, and he owns it. And yeah, he wasn't a very good Batman, but he was a good Bruce Wayne, and that's who he appears as here, looking fantastic. By the way, It's a little insulting to Michael Keaton because George Clooney is styled and dressed to match Michael Keaton's look from when they first shot this end thing, and Michael Keaton was going to stick around. Exactly, from the hair to the suit and the shirt. And I think they did that so they could reuse some of that footage. It's the same car that they shot with. So I think, we know they're good with face replacement because, of course, they did it so effortlessly throughout the whole film with the two Ezra Millers. But yeah, Clooney was a very last-minute replacement, and so they were able to salvage some of that footage shot with Keaton. The Flash this movie is supposed to be all about calming DC fans down, healing and love. And who's more chill than George Clooney? If he can say, what the heck, I'll focus on the positive of my DC experience, even though he had probably the most humiliating experience, why can't the rest of us? Okay, here we are. Number 1, Nicolas Cage's Superman. And if you don't instantly understand why this is the number 1 cameo in the movie by far, I think you will, or at least intellectually allow it by the end of my breakdown. All right, so talk about not having to do a cameo. Nicolas Cage wasn't even actually Superman. Instead, he had been cast as Superman back when Tim Burton, Kevin Smith had been running the script, back when Tim Burton was going to handle that character after having so successfully launched Batman. Going so far as to even do a costume test. This is a famous photo, especially amongst DC fans. And we got to see Burton's choice of the long hair. It seems crazy now, but in the 90s, this was the 90s, Superman did have long hair in the comics. So it was based on the source material, although itself quite controversial. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the movie never came to be. But in a multiverse film like The Flash, what a cool idea to see what could have been. It's similar to Marvel making the fan casting of John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic real in Multiverse of Madness. And for once, DC beat Marvel to the punch because Kevin Feige's dream of having Tom Cruise appear as Iron Man, who was the first casting choice for the role, didn't pan out. So, woo, finally, DC got to do something first. Here, Nicolas Cage's Superman, coming to life right out of that costume test photo, is even fighting a giant spider, which had been the pitch for the third act of his Superman movie. If you're wondering why he was fighting a giant spider. I thought it looked cool, actually. It sounded stupid. We all laughed when we heard what the pitch had been. But I don't know. I mean, also because it was just for fun here and for nostalgia. But it was fun. I was fine with it. And by the way, Nicolas Cage loves Superman. At one point, he owned a copy of Action Comics #1, of course, the very first appearance of Superman, which was stolen, then recovered, but then Cage ended up selling for $2 million when he was having financial difficulties. One of his children is even named Kal-El. This isn't his first DC Superman cameo, though. He also voiced the character in 2018's Teen Titans animated movie. The first multiverse movie, maybe? All right, so anyway. Sure, Cage is still suffering financially. It's sad but true, which has led to a lot of interesting career choices as of late, some of which have really panned out, some of them not so much. And he's also getting into the video game space, like a lot of his peers, appearing in video games. He's going to be in the upcoming release of the popular franchise Dead by Daylight and has been promoting it, which is part of the celebrity in a video game package. But here, he didn't just do it for the money or to stay in the public eye, but for also the genuine love of Superman. And that's why he's my #1, and it was just such a great idea. I would have loved, it's too bad that Tom Cruise thing didn't work out because that was an equally cool idea. And it's just, especially, it's funny because The Flash also talks about the casting of Back to the Future and, how, the ripple effect of that infecting Footloose and Top Gun Maverick. So I love mixing in like the Hollywood legend, especially because more and more people are aware of it, putting that in the films, especially in a multiverse film. So I just love it. I think it's very, not only funny, but very smart. And I love funny and smart. All right, so that's my breakdown of The Flash cameos. Share your own thoughts and rankings down below. Subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.